Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro, friends. Today's episode of the podcast is brought to you by our upcoming event, Assertiveness Training for the Hospitality Industry, which is also supported by our other sponsor, Elixir Specialty Coffee. The Assertiveness Training is happening on September the 21st. If you are thinking of preparing yourself to compete for competition, if you're preparing yourself for your future career, to own a business one day, if you'd like to get more confident in how to communicate, where boundaries are, what justice means, what it doesn't mean. If you're not got the confidence that you wish that you had to engage with people, this is the workshop for you. And if you can get to Sydney, or if you're in Sydney, this is perfect for you. If you would like to pick up Elixir while you're in Sydney and try Elixir, you can buy an Elixir Trio with your ticket to this event. Head to mapitforward.org/events and that will give you a link to the Eventbrite. Purchase your tickets. Right now, the tickets are $75 thanks to the gratitude of our financial sponsors for this event, which we'll be announcing soon. And our sponsors will have discount codes for their wholesale customers. Today on the Daily Coffee Pro, we are talking about whether transparency and traceability is the answer to the coffee price crisis. I've been getting this question a lot from people, and it's really interesting to see the way that people view the coffee price crisis and the potential solutions for it. And while I would love to tell you that transparency and traceability are going to be the silver bullets for the coffee price crisis, unfortunately, it's not. I'm writing a blog post about this, and it should be up in the next couple of days on mapitforward.org/blog. But here's the nuts and bolts of it. The coffee price crisis is not as simple as people would like to suggest or hope to think of it as it is presented. People like to say that the coffee price crisis is coffee being undervalued on the C market. And while at face value, that seems like a great definition for the coffee price crisis, it's actually not representative of the complexity of what the term the coffee price crisis really means. And here's what I mean by that. I've had tons of conversations on the main podcast, the main Map It Forward podcast, with people who have helped me understand how deeply complex what we call the coffee supply chain is. And it's helped me get to an understanding that the coffee price crisis is the result of a deeper problem that we have in coffee. And that's a brand crisis of coffee. If you think about the way that everybody that is in the supply chain, whether they be the geneticists who are developing the new varietals, or the producers who then take the seeds that are a consequence of that genetic manipulation, and then move along the supply chain to the pickers and to the people at the mills and the importers and the exporters and the drinkers and the roasters and the cafe owners and all of that. And then you consider the people who take the product and manipulate it and mass produce instant coffee, and people who take it and evolve it into different products like Elixir that we do, or nitro, or cold brew, or add CBD to it, all of this kind of stuff. The term coffee is suffering from a brand crisis. And because, and this is my opinion, because of that brand crisis, we can't clearly define what the coffee price crisis is in one statement. Because when you break down the coffee price crisis, what we get is we have to start considering things like, well, what is yield? What role is yield playing in the coffee price crisis? This term, the coffee price crisis, isn't just coffee is undervalued. Well, there's a reason that the market, this free market that we seem to think that we're a part of, is valuing coffee at the price that it is. And saying that the value of coffee, or that coffee is undervalued, suggests that there's one place that we can value coffee. Well, there's not. Coffee is traded on Arabica coffee, let's be clear with that. Arabica coffee is traded on 2 exchanges, and we affectionately call them the C market, but that's not actually what they're called. One exchange is called the Intercontinental Exchange, and the other exchange is, I think it's the Mercantile Exchange. Now, if we were in a coffee price crisis and it was we are in a coffee price crisis, but if it was simplistic as saying that it was a simple statement to say that this is the crisis, we would be able to pinpoint where the price crisis is. We would be able to say this is the price that is the crisis, but it's not. We don't know, we don't have a clear understanding. And by we, I mean we as an industry, as well as the people who are producing the coffee, cannot tell us the cost of production for a pound of coffee. Much like most people who are selling a latte can't tell us the cost of production or the COGS for a latte. There's a means to get that information, but most of the people who are in business in cafes and on coffee farms aren't aware of how to do that. That is a part of the coffee price crisis. Our inability to get access to the information that tells us what it costs to produce coffee, as well as the cost of doing business for producing that coffee. Those are 2 different numbers, and farmers are taking loans at ridiculously high interest rates. I'm talking 30 and 50%. And so that is an additional cost on top of the cost of production for coffee. So it's like the difference between the COGS, the cost of goods for pricing a latte, versus the cost of doing business, which is the total net profit of a latte. And most business owners couldn't tell you how to get that information from a profit and loss statement. Just like most farmers can't tell you how to get that information from their profit and loss statement. That all formulates as a part of the coffee price crisis. So, does transparency and traceability formulate part of that solution? Is it the solution? Well, it's a part of the solution. But I feel like it's too far. Let me put it this way. It's a part of the solution, but we have foundational things that need to come before that, before the effects of having transparency and traceability can reach the fruition that they need. But even those 2 things are far more complex than what we would like to believe. And here's why. If I was to say to you, how much money do you make a year? You would be taken aback by, who the fuck do you think you are to feel entitled to that information? If I asked a business owner how much money they make on a latte and how much money they're making every year, they would think, who does this woman think that she is for thinking that she is entitled to know that that information, and the audacity of her to ask the question in the first place? It's quite entitled. And therein lies the problem with transparency and traceability, particularly with transparency. Who the fuck do we think we are to expect farmers to open up their books to us? and make public the information of how much they have sold a pound of coffee to me versus how much they're selling a pound of coffee to my competitor. And we're not even going into how complex that would actually be and the complexity of the different levels of pricing. Like when I'm turning around and saying to someone, this is the price I paid for the coffee. Well, if you understood the number of people until it got to me that had to take a separate little cut of the price. Coffee per pound is getting sold and resold and resold and up the supply chain so many times before it gets to me. That when I tell you that I'm paying $3, $6, $12 a pound for this coffee green, what does that actually mean? That's the landed price. It's not the price FOB, free on board, which means that's the price that cumulatively everybody that has had a hand in producing, picking, milling, processing, transporting, all of that coffee to the boat. That's what the free on board or the FOB price is. But up until that point, the price of that pound of coffee changed so many times. So when we talk about transparency, what do we really mean? Who the fuck do we think we are to expect that a farmer should have the anonymity of that information taken away from them so that they can do business more freely with whomever they wish? And with regards to traceability, it's a really great concept, but we are so far away from a world where that is, well, the data with regards to having effective traceability has any integrity. And look, my past life as a senior business analyst with IBM, it was instilled into me that it's great to have these systems, but if you don't have data integrity, the systems really mean nothing. And we are a long way off having the systems required for this, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be working on them right now. And it's great that we are working on them right now. But are they the solution to the coffee price crisis right now? No, they're not. They are part of a solution that's coming down the road for the coffee price crisis. Because this is not the last coffee price crisis we're going to have. This is cyclical. It's not the first time it's happened, and it won't be the last time that it's happened. But what we need to be addressing right now is the complexity of the brand issues that coffee has. What is coffee, and what is the branding of coffee? Excuse me. I haven't heard any of us talking about it. I don't know that we've identified that we're in a transitionary phase of what the brand of coffee means. We live in two separate worlds. We live in a commercial market and we live in a specialty market. And I think that we're far more aware of the differences between those two brands than the consumers are. I think the definition of coffee is blurred for consumers. I think they're confused by it and intimidated by it. And I think that the coffee price crisis is a byproduct of that for many reasons. And, well, a better way to say that, I think the coffee price crisis is a consequence of the transitions and confusion around the branding of coffee. If the only people that were a part of the determining the price of coffee were coffee people, then that would suggest that my idea that coffee branding is in crisis would be incorrect. But we have this other group of people called speculators that trade on the coffee futures commodity market that highly influence what coffee pricing does. And then you add to that the idea that people think that specialty coffee is completely separate from the C market, and that if it's done properly, the relationship buying of specialty coffee is completely independent of the C market. That's incorrect. Across the world, coffee is taking its lead from the C market, whether it's traded as Arabica or Robusta, whether it's traded on the C market or off the C market through relationship buying. People are basing decisions on the C market. So while technically relationship buying is not a part of that, it is a part of it. People are basing their prices off the C market. And I know this has been a long episode of the Daily Coffee Pro, but this is a really, really complex situation. And to call it the coffee price crisis is not incorrect, but to suggest that it's simple and that the solutions are going to be simple is incorrect. I don't know the way we fix this. I really don't. I'm not in the fixing stage yet. I keep thinking that we're heading there, but the fixing of this isn't going to be something that happens overnight, and it's also not going to be done by a small group of people. It's also not going to be done by specialty coffee. The solutions to the coffee price crisis are going to come from a shift in understanding by coffee consumers, coffee roasters, cafe owners, producers, scientists, all of us, about what the brand of coffee is and how we shift the understanding of that so that people value this complex agricultural product much more. Right now, we have a huge supply of coffee. This is the 4th year in a row that there is more coffee being produced than we're consuming. That's another layer of the coffee price crisis. So I think that what we need to be doing as an industry is creating some sort of a complex matrix. And I don't mean that in the form of the movie, I mean that in the mathematical sense. We need to be creating a matrix that outlines all the complexities that are contributing to the coffee price crisis. And then we need to put a global project team together that decides that they are going to address different parts of it. And we all need to be working together to come to solutions around that. This is much like the Human Genome Project that was going on when I was at university studying genetics. Labs all across the world had a part of the human genome to sequence. And it was all being project managed in one hub. But everybody had a little chunk that they were responsible for taking care of. And I think that is how we are going to start solving a lot of the problems that we've got, that we're lumping into the coffee price crisis. I hope that has somehow helped you get your head around how intricate all of this is. I would love to hear your thoughts because we have on our Instagram at IMapItForward asked the question, is transparency and traceability the answer to the coffee price crisis. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. The blog post should be up, if not today, tomorrow. And I'd love to hear what you think. Peace, love, and peanut butter, friends. Have an amazing rest of your day. And thanks as always for all your support. It means the world to me.